Well, first of all, I just love skiing. Like, so much. There's nothing in the world that brings me more joy, ever.
Yeah, I'm scared to death right now, but I've got this. Like, I know deep down inside, I'm capable of what I'm about to do.
I came back way stronger. I felt like the rehab was pretty simple and straightforward. And I learned how to appreciate my body and how to take care of it, what to eat, and like to stretch. I was 18, so I felt like I was invincible at the time.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to The Athletic Stance, episode 9. This week's episode, we have an athlete that I grew up ski racing with. He is very passionate, a very amazing guy. He's entered the professional movie scene at an age that some would call late, but he's passionate. First, let's take a look at our sponsors, because without them, none of this is possible. Our first sponsor is Northwest Tech. If you haven't heard of them yet, you're missing out. They hand make customizable 3-layer outerwear to order in the Pacific Northwest. And that means you know that it keeps you warm, dry, and looking unique while you're sending it around the mountain. They've been generous enough to give me a coupon code for my listeners. Use the code AOS75 to get $75 off any custom piece of outerwear. Their site is in the show notes. This episode is brought to you by POC. POC makes the best helmets, goggles, and protective wear out there. They've been dedicated to protecting athletes since day one, and I wouldn't wear a different helmet, goggle, back pad, or hip pads. With their spin technology and VPD system, there are no other products on the market that are like it. Definitely go and check out POCsports.com and protect yourself today. What's up, guys? Welcome back. This is episode 10. We're moving right along, and I can't believe how much support I've gotten from you guys. Today's episode is with an amazing young lady. She actually entered the sport of big mountain skiing pretty late, and we talk about that. We talk about competition. We talk about support between athletes and a whole lot more. We talk about accident reports and avalanches and being prepared and being curious, and just absolutely love this conversation that I had with Hadley Hammer, and I hope you guys do as well. Thanks again for listening.
So my name is Hadley Hammer. I'm from Jackson Hole, Wyoming, where it seems to always snow. I grew up skiing with my family since I was a little kid. I have 2 brothers, and my parents are avid outdoors people. But I actually followed a more traditional life path of working a ton and going to school. And actually lived in Washington, D.C. after I graduated, and dove deep into the corporate desk job world for a few years, and then realized that city life and office life was not doing it for me. So I moved home, but continued to work a bunch, and then started training at a gym, Mountain Athlete, where my little brother trained for the U.S. ski team. And a bunch of the kids there were competitive big mountain skiers, and I ended up signing up for a few comps and loving it and quitting my job and competing for quite a few years on the qualifying tour, and then made it to the Freeride World Tour for 2 years, and then have transitioned into filming with Teton Gravity Research ever since.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah.
What was the gym that you went to? Was it Crystal's gym?
The gym I went to actually is where Crystal trains herself, and where she started before she opened her own gym, and it's called Mountain Athlete, and it's run by a man named Rob Shaw.
Awesome. Sweet. You said you weren't much of an athlete before that. What inspired you to get into the gym and start working out?
My brother and my friend Spencer at the time both pushed me because I was working in a hotel and just working these, like, I was one of the managers and I was there 90-hour work weeks, and my body was starting to just be so rugged, and my little brother was like, you should at least train in the gym just to start to feel strong, just so you can play in the Tetons again, because I had been living in DC for 2 years and a total office jockey and like barely exercising, so it was kind of just like a way to get back into general fitness.
Yeah, totally. Ease back into going and playing in the mountains.
Yeah, I don't know if it was an easing. It was definitely, I was so sore I could not walk for like weeks on end.
Crazy. That's funny. Gyms will get you. Personal trainers will get you. That's for sure.
Oh, yeah.
So you skied from a young age. Did you race at all? Or...
Yeah, I only raced for, I think, like 2 years. I must have been in like 6th and 7th grade, I think. But I also was a figure skater. I did Nordic skiing, and did a little park and pipe stuff as well. So not like, my little brother was a huge ski racer, was on the U.S. ski team, but I never really got that into it.
Yeah, I think I raced against your brother for a while because I grew up racing.
Yeah.
So... He was, what year was he born? Like 92 or?
He's in 88.
88. Okay, I knew it was 2 years on one side or the other.
Yeah.
So, yeah. He was always like just outside my age group until I got into fist races, and then I started racing against him.
Nice. He's so good.
Yeah. Definitely.
He's just such a pretty skier. It's insane.
Yeah. So, like, as you have gone into this whole competition circuit and then into the filming circuit, do you have, like, any morning routines or evening routines that you, like, have to stick to? It's obviously hard when we travel so much, and like you might have to get up at 5 to get, on the skin track, or you might sleep in for a shoot till 8 or whatever. But do you have any morning routines that you try and stick to, or?
Yeah, definitely, and it's something that's been it's morphed a little bit when I was competing. I definitely had like a very set morning routine before us on competition days, which I tried to do most days just because it felt like if I did it most days it'd be easy to do on a competition day. But a general like wake up and like I try to make sure I feel like thankful for a few things the first thing when I wake up and like open my eyes, and then especially on competition days I listen to a ton of music. I love music, and I felt like it always just helped me stay like in a particular mindset. So I had like for competitions I had like a 3-hour playlist that I would listen to that started super mellow and then would like kind of ramp up and then be like into some pretty heavy metal music, which is not normally what I listen to, but got me like pretty amped right before a comp, and I like that it kept me sort of like in the zone that I wanted to be in all the time. And I'd always have the same breakfast. I would always have miso soup and a little bit of salmon and rice, which felt like it was hydrating, but also like not too crazy on my stomach because I'd be usually fairly nervous before a competition. And then when I would get up, you end up standing around, as you know, so much before comps, and that's where I'd really want music because I'd like to dance a little bit because it would keep my muscles and like my body feeling like it was staying loose and like having fun. And then right before I would drop in, I would sort of do like a mental flashback of runs that I did well at, and times that I felt really good, and then quickly go over my line in my head again. And then it's so funny, all the comps that I did really well at, or lines that I've skied really well, I always see a bird at the top. And I don't know, like, if it reminds me of just like that idea that all the birds in the mountains are your friends that have passed.
Yep.
But I'd always keep an eye out for a bird, and it would be interesting every time I saw one. I'd have like the best run, whether it was in a comp or just a free ski run or a filming line.
Totally. Yeah, I lost one of my best friends. I don't know if you were still competing when he did, Jordan Niedrich.
No, but I know, yeah, he was awesome.
Yeah, absolutely one of the best people that have walked this earth, and now whenever I see birds anywhere, I'm like, yeah, he's having fun up there. Like,
yeah.
he's flying around.
Still flying.
Yep, totally. Yeah, it's crazy how nervous you can get at the top of a comp, and like how much like just eating a little bit of the wrong thing can just totally set you off. It's crazy how big nerves can play into like your physiological state.
Totally.
I've never heard.
Yeah, it was always.
Go for it.
It was always so funny because I would have to like bring all these like weird. I'd bring like miso soup packets or like stuff to make miso soup when I was competing in Europe and eat them every morning. People were just like, "What? Who are you? Like, what are you doing?" But yeah, that seemed to always work for me. And I once read this book about sumo wrestlers, which is also very random, but they would never, before a big sumo match for like 2 weeks, sumo wrestlers wouldn't eat anything that stood on 4 legs, because they obviously, like, the goal of sumo wrestling is to stay on 2 legs. So
Yep.
I always figured if I would just eat like fish or chicken or something that like only had 2 legs or swam, that it would be good luck as well.
Totally. That's
Again,
hilarious. Yeah, I've never heard of the miso soup trick as a morning, as breakfast, but I could totally see it working and replacing a lot of electrolytes, because, like, you know, we're out there working hard. We try not to sweat, but you still end up, you know, exhausting electrolytes and stuff. So.
Yeah. It's pretty awesome. You should try it.
I will. I'll give it a try for sure. I need to figure out where I can get miso soup fixings around here. I'm sure City Market has them.
Oh, yeah.
What's your favorite part about skiing? Like, what gets you the most passionate about skiing and coming back and fired up to send the big lines that you do?
I think it's 2 things. One, I think it's the people. I feel like I've met so many amazing humans just in the short amount of time that I've been skiing, and like the ski world brings together like such passionate people. I mean, no one really makes that much money. It's a hard lifestyle. It's a dangerous lifestyle to a certain extent. And so I think it brings the people that are really in it have so much passion for life or living life a particular way that I really connect with. And I just always felt so comfortable around people, which I don't know if that's always been the case. So I think on one hand, like that's been my favorite experience of being a skier, is just getting to ski with your friends and meeting new people all around the world. And also I think for me, growing up, like school was never that hard and work was never that hard, but like physical movement stuff has always been more difficult for me. And I loved that challenge and seeing those like little gains, whether they're in like physical strength or like learning to, cause I wasn't a ski racer. Like my first few years, like I watched the comp footage and like I was so far in the back seat, like I don't even think I knew what it meant to like flex the front of your boot. And getting to see that like transition of going from there into being a better technical skier, which I still feel like I have so much to learn, but I love that there's so, like, it's endless how the, like, path of becoming, like, better and better. And I love that process of, like, working on it and feeling like you can have, like, these, like, little changes all the time.
Yeah, totally. You can always, like, become better at something, whether it's decision making and when to say, even if it's when to say no, or like pushing your physical boundaries, or, you know, like learning, you know, a new trick, or, you know, trying to send a cliff that's like maybe a little bit bigger than you sent before, or, you know, some line that has some technical crux in it that seems super intimidating. And it's all different. Like every line, you know, unless you're skiing the same line all the time, but even that changes. It's always, like, different, so you always have to adapt your, you know, your state of mind and your body to, like, meet the surroundings.
Yeah, totally. And it's like, I think it's because it's never ending, it keeps your interest all the time. Exactly what you said. Like, I ski the same lines all the time at home, but every time you ski, it's like a little bit different because the snow is changing, or the light's different, or your skis are different, or whatever. It's just so fun that it's the fluidity of, like, constant motion and change is really awesome. Because, man, when you live in a city, like when I was in DC, it felt like every single day was on repeat. Like, wake up, take the bus to work, sit and stare at a computer, come home, eat, like rinse and repeat. And I feel like you never really changed as a person because nothing was changing around you.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. I think it's pretty easy to get stagnant in a city, or even, you know, in any routine that you're not, you know, forced to face challenges. And I think that that's, like, a big thing that's, I don't want to call it a problem, but something that's happening in society these days is people get used to their routines and then they get comfortable, and then anything that's outside of their comfort zone scares them, fires, like, their, you know, amygdala in a fight or flight, like, way, and then all of a sudden you have, like, these polarizing, divisive groups of people that are just like, no, I believe this and nothing else, and I won't adapt. And I think it kind of comes from, like, that routine of, like, you just get so used to being comfortable doing one thing.
Yeah, I think you're, like, so spot on, because I don't think being out of your comfort zone I don't know if the reaction necessarily always has to be fear, or I don't think it should be fear. I think it should be, like, curiosity. And within that curiosity, you can determine whether, like, the situation requires fear or excitement, or, like, being more inquisitive. But I feel like because everyone's in such a routine and, like, not exposed enough, people become fearful, and then they stop being curious and stop wanting to learn about their surroundings and learn about the other person, or learn about, like, someone else's thought processes or beliefs. And yeah, it just creates, like, a series of bubbles that people won't explode out of, and then we don't get along and we all start shooting each other. And I think it's out of fear, which it shouldn't be the, like, reaction to being out of your comfort zone. It should be curiosity.
Definitely. I love that, because as soon as you invite curiosity into your life, you open up, like, the world becomes infinite. You don't have to live in one specific spot. You can go out and venture out. And if it doesn't work for you, you know, that's fine, but at least you went and took the time and the energy and the, you know, you went out and you explored that little piece. And often once you go, like, most people's reactions, I think, are when you have a problem to go around it, to push it aside. And when you go through it, you actually go through this, like, this massive personal growth, even if it's a small thing. Like, I know you said that you weren't necessarily comfortable being around people all of your life, but I think once you there were probably times when you were entering the big mountain scene and the competition scene that it was uncomfortable. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, so I want to hear your perspective, but it was uncomfortable. This holds true for me, where I was uncomfortable being around certain people because I didn't really know how to be myself. But then the more that I saw, the authenticity of the big mountain community, which is one of the things that I love about skiing so much as well, like, it forced me to step out of my comfort zone, to just, be myself, to make friends. And as soon as I did that, my world just changed.
Yeah, totally. And it's so funny when so many people talk about, like, the comp scene. I think people think it's really competitive or really intimidating, and I felt like maybe my first few comps, it was definitely intimidating to meet such a, like, tight-knit group of people. But it was cool because once you came through, like, any finish line, I feel like I would always just get tackled by humans, and, like, everyone would be so excited for you, and it was such a, like, supportive group of people. It was amazing.
I mean, you were always crushing it and sending huge lines, so people...
or crashing.
Or crashing. But, yeah, I think for me, like, I made it, my first competition was in Snowbird 2011, and I made it through the qualifier into, like, the 5-star when it was still the Free Skiing World Tour, and, like, Julian Carr was 2 in front of me, Julian Lopez was the next guy, and then, like, Johnny Collinson was right behind me, and I'm like, what did I get myself into? Like, where am I? What am I doing? Am I even supposed to be here? Like, what is going on? But it was pretty crazy because, like, you just strike up a conversation with one of them and, like, be yourself. And, like, Johnny was drinking a beer behind me. And I'm like, well, it just felt so alien to me. But, yeah, like, by the time Kirkwood rolled around that season, it was like I knew everyone. I was playing pool with Hugo Harrison after, when he judged, and, like, Skogan Sprang judged that one, and it was just, it was so crazy and amazing how the scene, like, literally you just have to show up and be yourself and you're going to make a ton of friends.
Yeah, and I love that there's, like, no barriers to entry for big mountain skiing. Like, if you want to be a professional golfer or basketball player or baseball, whatever, and you weren't, like, killing it by the time you were 14, like, those hopes were usually, like, gone. But for big mountain skiing, like, my first comp, I was 25 when I first entered it. And, like, they don't ask you, like, a history of your skiing. Like, you just got on the internet and signed up. And I think it's really cool that there's still opportunities out there for people to do something totally different in what they really want to do, like, later in life or with no, like, previous requirements.
Yeah, totally. Like, the same kind of goes true for ski racing. Like, you wouldn't hop in to try to ski race. The age of 25, people would be like, who in the hell are you? What are you doing right now? But yeah.
But I wonder, like, it's crazy because I feel like, why not, like, sports are so interesting, professional sports, that there are those age limitations because, like, I was such a shitty ski racer and now I feel like I'm an okay skier, and, like, what would have happened if they would have, like, stuck with, like, if people could do sports later in life when they're, like, more comfortable as humans and, like, figured out their bodies better. And
yeah, totally. I mean, I think we put a lot of barriers and parameters on what is supposed to happen in life, and, like, a lot of people, I'm 27, broke my back a year and a half ago, tore my ACL this last year, and people are like, so you're pretty much done, right? And I'm like, no, I'm the strongest I've ever been. I've worked out all summer. I'm ready to go and crush it this season. And they're like, well, why are you, like, what are you doing? I'm like, I have till I'm, like, 40 to call it quits on the big mountain competition scene if I want. I don't know that I'm going to compete this year. I'm more focused on a couple other projects that I have going on, but like I'm not writing off competing. I'm not even writing off, I might compete in park in the next years, which,
Yeah.
you know, like people are going to be like, well, who's this 28-year-old schmuck trying to get in on the park comps? But, you know, like if I can get the training in that I want this year and get the doubles down that I want, then I have no problem walking in and competing against people who are half my age. It'll be fun.
Yeah.
Like, so, yeah.
Yeah, I think age limitations are rather silly.
Yeah, totally. I mean, there's obviously, like, a point. But, I mean, not even. Like, you have people like David Saputo and I'm drawing a blank on her name right now, but they're like in their 50s and crushing it. And, you know, like they're out there facing their own fears and their own... It's really like skiing is a solo sport, and it's really, you compete against yourself. And then you have a group of people that are supporting you in the competition with yourself, you know?
Yeah, totally.
That's how I feel about it. You know, you said that, like, before we started the podcast, you said you were in Chile this summer twice. You've obviously been to a couple other, like, you've traveled Europe and everything. Where's the your favorite spot that you've ever traveled to, and why? What was so cool about it?
Ooh, I don't know. There's so many. I feel like because it still feels so new to me. Trips get me so excited. I love traveling so much and seeing new places and how other parts of the world live and how other humans live in different parts of the world. It's really hard to narrow down. I feel like in general, I really like skiing in Europe just because skiing's such a big part of their culture. And so that's reflected in the resorts and sort of how the infrastructure of skiing works there. Like people just love skiing, and you have those like classic ski days where you like ski really great snow all day, like ride all the gondolas and the lifts and hike, and then have really good food and wine for like no money at all. And everyone's just so happy. But I think one of the cooler places I've been in a while was a sailing trip in Norway, in Svalbard specifically, which is like an island north of Norway. And it was just like this, so beautiful. It was just a floating like island of couloirs straight to the ocean.
That's awesome.
And there's whales and walruses and reindeer and like all these animals running around, and we were on a sailboat, which I had never been on before, which I really love. And it was just a really peaceful, like beautiful place.
Yeah. Sounds it. I've never been north of Austria in Europe, and the skiing in Austria was awesome, and the culture there was awesome. I was too young to drink, and I don't drink anymore now, so I don't know if I'll ever get that opportunity, but to, you know, drink an après there, I will obviously go back and ski, but
they operate very hard.
I'm sure. I am sure.
But you almost don't even need to drink because it's so entertaining. Like, yeah, you can just watch. The people watching there at the opera scene is unreal.
Oh, you got me excited for it. Gotta book a trip.
Yeah.
People watching is awesome. I love.
Yeah.
Like you said.
And Austria is kind of nice because, like, I love Chamonix so much, but it's definitely like you have to be on your game 24 hours. Like, it has a higher degree of danger, where it's kind of nice in Austria. You kind of feel like you're back in the States where there's tree skiing and like there's not crevasses everywhere. And you get like the European vibe without like being scared every day.
Yeah, for sure. Without like, fighting for your life. every day, for sure. Yeah, I totally think that, one of the amazing things about traveling is getting to see other cultures, and you get to pop that comfort bubble and be like, oh, what's this about? Like, what, you have to eat different foods, you have to, go through different experiences that you wouldn't normally, and I think that, that's just like an added bonus to traveling for skiing.
Yeah, it's just such a good reminder that like all the routines and habits we have placed on ourselves are so arbitrary. Like they're irrelevant because someone's doing it completely different on the other side of the world and they're still waking up alive every day.
Right, they're still doing something crazy.
Yeah.
Speaking of food and traveling and all that, like, do you have a specific diet that you try and keep to when you're home? Or do you, like a lot of the athletes that I've talked to so far, like, yeah, I try and keep it to this, but I let myself cheat quite often because I don't want to be, like, intolerant to things when I do travel?
Totally. Yeah, I agree with that. I think if you don't treat your body like a dump truck every once in a while when you go on trips, like, you'd be so wrecked if you were forced to eat particular food and it made you sick, and then what was the point? But for me, I love food so much, and I studied hospitality, so I like studied food and wine.
Yep.
And it's always been super. It's like cooking for people is one of my favorite things in the world, so I don't think I'll ever have a specific diet, but in like what food I eat. But for me, it's just about like really high quality food and local food. Like, I don't like cheap food. I think it's actually a huge problem in America. Like,
Yep.
Our food system is so gnarly to me, and that's another reason why I like being in Europe all the time, because, I'll eat like 8 croissants a day and be losing weight, and that it's because they don't have all these artificial things in their food. Like, it's crazy. You'll look at a box of apples that's shipped to a grocery store, and there's an ingredients label on the box, and it's more than just apple, and like, that's so messed up.
Yeah.
So for me, I really try to eat everything. Like, I like gluten, I like meat, I like vegetables, as long as they come from a good source. Like, I try to buy organic as much as possible, or mostly try to work with local farms in Jackson. I work with this one, Cosmic Apple, I get the farm share with, that I split with my parents every year, and then try to just make a ton of soups or pickle food or freeze it and preserve it as much as I can, so through the winter I can have like local fresh vegetables, and then hopefully find someone that's killed an elk.
Yep.
And try to just eat food that's more normal. But I love butter, I like fat, like, I'm not afraid of any of that stuff. I think it's way more important just to eat real food that's not full of crap.
Yeah, totally. I totally agree with you with how backwards, our society lives, especially when you spend time in the city and you see how people live, like in Crested View. And, like, there's some fast food, I think, in Jackson, but, like, it's pretty minimal for the most part. Correct me if I'm wrong, but
it's very minimal.
Yeah, it's like, it's crazy when you drive into the city and you see how many fast food restaurants there are all over, and, like, when you know what's in it, and, like, yeah, it's not only is it not good for the people, it's also not good for the environment. And Ian McIntosh and I went down this road till like super hard, but yeah, it's one of those things where, like, the more that you can eat locally, you're gonna know where the food is coming from, you're gonna know the person who's growing it, which, like, that's just an amazing part of the community or part of your life that you can, get curious about and then go and find and make relationship with. And then, you are also helping save the environment because you're not trucking the food from New Zealand or flying it from New Zealand to get an apple or, whatever it is. It's like you get to, you get to eat something that's grown less than 100 miles away from you. And yeah, I love trying to source food locally around here. In the winter, it can get kind of hard, but we just got a shipping container farm in the last year and a half.
Cool.
That's like literally 250 feet away from my house. I love it. It's awesome. Maybe a little bit farther than that. It's probably more like 1,000. But it's close. I love it. I absolutely love it.
I just think people should go back. Like, I have so many friends that ask about like diet and all this stuff, and it's like, just eat real food and your body kind of tells you what you want. And like, you walk into a grocery store and it's like gnarly. Like, I think 90% of what's in a grocery store is like not real food. Like, the vegetable and meat aisle is like the only place you should be going. But like all the shit in the middle is like, that stuff's terrible for you.
Yeah, totally. And, I think it's like we talked about earlier, it's okay to give yourself like a little bit of to cheat, or to, if I eat chips, I eat like Terra chips, which are vegetable chips, which, aren't, in the end, they're probably cooked in some weird oil, but like other than that, and it probably isn't that weird, but like other than that, Yeah,
and I think that I had a really good talk with one of my friends about this idea of like, and this is kind of on topic, kind of off, like guilt.
Yeah.
And then, like, I don't think everyone feels so guilty about everything here. And like, you watch Friends and like, they have like a treat and they feel guilty about it. And you're like, well, you're not supposed to feel guilty about it. Like, if you're going to have a treat, like, have the treat and be stoked. Because your body actually, like, they've done all these studies, like there was one, the famous like milkshake study, and they gave two groups each the same milkshake, and they called one like a low fat, like good for you, like super healthy milkshake, and the other one they were like, oh, this is super fattening and high sugar and like really gnarly and tons of calories. And they were able to, I have no idea how the science works, but look at how people reacted to drinking it and how they digested it. And the people that thought they were having this thing that was really bad for you ended up, it like was processed through their body as like more calories and more fat, and exactly what they said. And the people that thought it was a healthy milkshake, like didn't consume as many calories from it, and like it went through their system better. And there's like such a strong connection between your mind and your body and what it's eating. And so like, if you sit and have like a big piece of cake and feel shitty about it, like you're putting so much stress on your system, and you're probably like, your body's not digesting it as well. But if you sit down and like, yeah, I'm having this cake and it's so freaking good and I'm so pumped, like it's way better for you. Like, I don't know, that idea of like feeling guilty about what you're eating, I think is also not great.
Yeah, totally. It's amazing how powerful the mind is. And like, I'll sit and think about how grateful I am just to have the food in front of me and like try and eat mindfully. And it's like, it makes such a huge difference in how I end up feeling in like the next couple hours and the next days, if I just like am rushing around and just like shoving stuff in my mouth and not thinking about it or not appreciating it. Like, I feel like I have a difference, and maybe I'm even placeboing that difference into effect because I have a different thought process, and maybe I am like feeling a little bit guilty when I don't give the food the time of day. But I think mindfulness, like a lot of us don't live in the now very well as a whole in society. And when like when you're disconnected from the now, like I think you're like less empowered in your life. You're less, you're obviously less present. And when you're less present, then, I think you're less productive. I think you enjoy things less. And like overall, like I don't know if you're into the law of attraction or not at all, but I think if you can't be in the now, then you can't really attract the things that you want in your life. which could also be put like you're not as productive as you could be, so you don't get to put in the efficient work to get where you want to go for a, a non like woo perspective on it.
No, totally. Well, I just think, I think you're spot on. I think we could all be a little bit more I don't know if focus is the right word, but just, present and experiencing things.
Totally. So, like, you obviously entered the competition scene a little bit later, but is there one piece of encouragement or advice that you were given that has stuck with you, or that has, made like a lasting impact in your life and in your ski career?
I think one of the biggest ones, and it's still something I'm working really hard on, but this woman, Jess Baker, who's become one of my favorite ski partners, and she used to compete and now is like an incredible XM guide and still shreds so hard, and we get to do a bunch of trips together, which is really fun. But she always reminded me that I can't because, obviously like big mountain comps are a judge sport. And so it's easy to let that judgment affect how you feel about yourself. And I feel like the best thing she always told me was like that, the score at the end of the day isn't like a final representation of even my skiing, but also of me as a person. And I think I am really hard on myself. And it's something I'm still like constantly working on, but I think it's important to know, like, just because you do poorly in a comp or in a ski run or whatever, like that doesn't change who you are as a person. And it's just a reflection of your skiing for 1 minute, out of hundreds of thousands of hours. And so not to like beat yourself up too much, which I still do, but it's good advice that I'm trying to take.
Yeah, totally. I think there's like a healthy balance of how it motivates you when you do mess up, or you don't perform exactly the way that you would like to. There's a healthy level of motivation that you can get from it, but it's so easy. Like, it was really easy for me. I was like a 4.0 student for up until I was not in college, but in high school, and grew up ski racing, and so I was like really hard on myself. And I realized after a while of this internal thought process going on, I was like, wow, I am not helping myself at all with this thought process. Like, there can be some good things that come from it, but I don't need to, like, would you talk to anyone else like that? Probably not.
Yeah. I mean, it's so interesting how some people, I think myself included, and sounds like you, it's like so easy to be everyone else's cheerleader and not your own.
Yeah. Yeah.
And figuring out how to like make sure you also like are easy on yourself. Because otherwise it doesn't, that negative, like over critical, judgmental stuff it doesn't really serve much of a purpose.
Yeah. Totally. And I think the more that it runs inside your head, you can start to have little like deflections of the thought process that can go external. And like, you might see someone that doesn't, for me, I might see someone that doesn't necessarily seem like my type of person, and then I might have like a flash judgment, which I think stems from that self-judgment. And so yeah, as soon as I started seeing that kind of stuff, and I was like, okay, well, hold on, like, that thought process cannot exist anymore, because as soon as it goes external, then you really, I think you can see it, you can gain perspective on it, and you're like, oh, no.
Yeah, totally. I think you kind of judge people based off of the things that you don't like the most about yourself.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
Or your own insecurities, or
Yeah, totally. Not feeling enough in some way. Or, yeah, I think, a lot of, on the male side of the sport, I think there's, not necessarily in the big mountain scene, but especially in the park scene, there's a big ego issue, and a lot of it comes down to, like, oh, I can do that, or, like, that wasn't steezy, or, like, and it is just a reflection of your own insecurities. And, one thing I talked about with McKenna was that I would really love to see, like, the female side of the sport, especially in competition. Like, one girl goes and she'll wait in the finish until all the women have gone, and, like, for the most part, and there's just, like, this sense of community and camaraderie that, maybe biologically we're supposed to be, somewhat different, but I think, you talked about, people, like, shooting at other people and all, the craziness that's happened. Like, I was half a mile away from Vegas when that happened, and I've been within a mile of 2 other shootings, and they're all men, and it generally ends up being, isolationism and people that think that they can't relate. And I think, in some ways they get these ideas and they, like, think that they have to take on the world alone, and that's absolutely, like, no one can take on the world alone, and no one, we all have to have a team. And I would love to see more. David Wise and I talked about this as well. I'd love to see more community in the masculine side of the sport, and more support, and more of an ability to, drop the ego. And, in the big mountain scene, it's beautiful. You see it a lot more in the big mountain community, but, there's still, I think, some work that can be done from all of us on that side to create more and more of a community, and, to know when it's okay to send, when, like, and that, like, as a personal thing, like, that you can make the choice, and, people might heckle you or something, but if you want to make that choice, that's totally, like, okay and empowering in its own way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. It's just so funny because my gut reaction almost when you first started talking was thinking that, like, also girls could, like, we should split it and the girls should get a little bit of that, like, not ego-ness, but I think it's funny because I noticed there's almost, like, the guys can be too egotistical or too confident, and I've definitely seen that even in the film world. Mm-hmm. But the girls can be too underconfident, or, like, not have enough ego, and there's too much, like, should I do this, or, like, can I do this? And there should be more, like, I'm doing this, like, let's do this. So it's kind of funny. I think we could I do like that the sport kind of mixes the guys and girls quite a bit, because I think there's so much to learn between both groups.
Totally.
Because we have that, like, nurturing quality, but sometimes we're like, we almost nurture ourselves too much, whereas sometimes we just need to send it. But also sometimes somebody needs to tell another guy, like, maybe you shouldn't send it.
Yeah, totally. Like, maybe it's not the day today, let's wait and, let's send it on a day when we have a little bit more snow or whatever it is.
For sure. That's funny.
Yeah, totally. What comes to mind is, I'm trying to think which movie it is, but there's an MSP movie where Michelle Parker is, like, asking about whether she should send this cliff, and she ends up falling on it. I think Hoji is like, or Heimer, one of them is like, you know, just send it, like, it's whatever. And she ends up eating it, but, like, she totally could have just skied into it, and it would have been safe for her to send no matter what. And
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. I can totally see it from that other side. I think, you know, for me, the level of the sport has been pushed to a level where people can go out and hurt themselves really badly because of an ego, and especially dudes. So I see it from that perspective, and like I'm like, well, why would you want to do that when you could, you know, not hurt yourself, ski on, and you know, I also am reflecting a lot of that back on myself, because like my ACL injury had nothing to do with that. My ski got caught in between the plywood and support for a rail, and just it was gnarly. I'm lucky that it was just my ACL.
Yeah.
It was super gnarly. I'll send you the video after this. If maybe you don't want to see it. But my back was definitely an ego thing, and a lack of mindfulness, and a lack of being, you know, I was in between 2 jobs and catching some runs, and was just like in 6th gear that whole season, just crushing. Like any time there was a send, I was taking it double. Like it was, yeah. And that one day I jumped, I was sending this huge hit into moguls, and my ski bent when I landed, and just tossed me head over heels. And the crazy thing about that was I wasn't wearing my helmet, and my helmet was in my backpack where it ended up hitting the tree. So it ended up saving me from like a lot worse. But it was just one of those like crazy experiences where you're like, why didn't I put my helmet on? Like what, like everything that shaped that whole experience, you're like, what in the, like, obviously that was there for a reason, or like I assign meaning to it, you know, that it was there for a reason. But yeah, crazy experience. And then Jordan passed away like a month and a half later, and I had a lot of like guilt and shame, like why not me? Because I, you know, for a long time was like partying too hard in the ski scene, and not taking it seriously, and not working out, not attending to my fitness, smoking cigarettes, and doing things that deep down didn't align with me or who I wanted to be. And then Jordan, who is just like this amazing soul, who was, you know, he was always humble, always stoked, sent the hugest, most beautiful backflips off of everything, and, you know, an amazing speed flyer. And yeah, no, that was, I'm kind of going on a side tangent, but it was, you know, it was definitely ego that was driving me to ski like that, and I saw the possibilities of where that could have taken me had the circumstances been different, and how my life could have changed or ended because of that. And yeah, I mean, you're not always, like, Jordan didn't have an ego at all. He was, you know, he had that
definitely didn't.
absolute lack of one. He was always, I remember out at Crystal, he sent like this 40, 50 foot backflip on day one, and I hit this little couloir, and then did a 360, and like that was like a little corked, and came around, landed. That was my run. It wasn't crazy. I didn't think it was that crazy. I was pretty stoked on the 3 because I felt really steezy, but like other than that, you know, I was like, yeah, whatever. And I remember Jordan went pretty late in the pack and he tossed this huge backflip. Everyone is like, what is this kid doing? The conditions didn't necessarily seem to warrant it, but he was so confident in what he was doing, and he stomped the crap out of it, skied to the finish. Everyone got all stoked. The competition ended, and he... You know, I waited. There were a lot of people that wanted to talk to him because it was so sick. And I waited and, like, went up to him after there was, like, no one around. And I was like, dude, that was absolutely ridiculous. And he, like, turned around and he's like, no, dude, like, your 3 was even more sick. And I'm like,
Oh.
you know, it was just one of those times where, like, you just... One of those feelings where you get, like... That was the first time I'd ever met him. And... You just, like, I got this feeling of, like, wow, this kid is really just, like, in it for community and in it for all the right reasons. And, you know, that was super, super inspiring for me to have someone come in, crush it like that, and then turn around and give me the props. It was, like, how, like, you just put me to shame, like, you know, like... How do you be such a beautiful person in the world? So, yeah. Like that's that's a story that, you know, when I talk about him and everything, that was meeting like that was like such a special moment for me and taught me so many lessons, and I try and carry that on as much as I possibly can. For sure. I mean, while we're on the topic, I think that, you know, in the sport, we obviously lose friends every year because of the inherent danger and, you know, what we're out there doing. Do you have any techniques, I don't want to call it a technique, but like practices that you do to like help yourself move through losing friends in the sport, or, you know, like how do you deal with that?
Yeah, I feel like that in the beginning, like, you know, like you said, like a few people would die every year, and I don't think I was ever close enough with anyone for it to like really affect me, or like, oh, okay, like obviously sad for the loss of like a community member. But then when Matilda Rappaport died, that was sort of the first one for me that was just a full crushing darkness. And it took a really long time to even just get out of the like grief stage. And luckily another, Anna Mae Slinning, who competed on the Freeride World Tour, happened to be in Jackson fairly shortly after, and it was really nice to be with another, like, as you said, like the girl community is quite close because there's so few of us. And Anna Mae and Matilda and I had all competed together, and it was really nice for her to be here, and we just cried for like days. Which I think is part of the process for sure. And I think that's the thing. I think dealing with death, like, is a process, and it's important in that process, especially to respect that it just takes a lot of time, and you kind of want to rush through it, mostly to like get the like pain over with.
Totally not feel it anymore.
But I think it's kind of important to feel that pain and like that sadness. And I think with Matilda, what was interesting, and I just had a long talk we had our North Face Athlete Summit, and one of her closest girlfriends is on the North Face team as well. And we talked a lot about her death just 2 weeks ago, and I was confused why it like hurt me so much and why I was so affected, because it like kind of all last year was super tough on me. Like I went, not this past summer, but the summer before, like I'd gone to South America, and like the first time it was for a photo shoot, and we were skiing out of bounds, and I was like so frozen with fear about it, and just like not feeling like frozen. And as we talked about, like I think that state of frozenness is really tough to be in, and like not that helpful, but I didn't know how to get out of it, and ended up like not even really skiing, which made me feel like I was doing my job poorly because I was there obviously to take photos for a brand. And I was just like, couldn't really figure out what was going on, but all I could think about was Matilda. And all last year, it was kind of the same thing, even like, especially just on trips that were all backcountry, like when we were in Bolivia with TGR. Like I remember getting to the top of the one line we skied and like trying not to show Mac that I was like bawling because I just kept thinking of her.
Yep.
And I think what was interesting, and Abe and I were talking about this, was that for Matilda, I think why the death hit so hard was because she reminded myself a lot of me. And I feel like she was the type of person that you just assumed would live into her 90s. Like she had just gotten married. She was so happy with her husband. Like you pictured her like having such a cool, great ski career and then like having a family. And like she was so like just such a sweet person and so kind. And like she wasn't the one like pushing it to the extreme ever.
Yep.
And she was such a good skier. And like, you know, she would still go to Alaska and she would still do like comp runs that were like definitely pushing it. Like she had awesome runs in Verbier. And not to say she was like meek in her skiing, but like you never expect, like you just see the people that are hanging out there all the time. And she was not one of them. And so for her to die, I think it hit me because I feel like we're similar in that way of like, I definitely push it and put it out there, but I don't know, like I picture my life of having a family eventually and like living till I'm like 120 and like being that old lady like ski touring in the mountains, and like that's what I see. And then you realize that like that's not a guarantee no matter what.
Yep.
And I think that was really hard to process with Matilda because you just didn't really expect it. And she was just so freaking nice and sweet and like gentle and kind, and like you don't expect those type of people to die, but at the end of the day, like any of us could. And I think it was a really good lesson too, in that like you just can't make mistakes out there. Like there's no room for errors, and being really honest with yourself at the start of the ski season. Like, are you up on, like, are you still continuing to learn, especially if you're traveling in the backcountry? Like, are you on your shit? Like, have you taken the right courses? Like, have you practiced with your beacon a bunch? Like, are you the best partner that you can be in the mountains? And I think that's how I've been trying to deal with it, is like, okay, Matilda's death was really hard because it was a loss of like a friend. It was hard because it was a like really blunt reality check that like, even though like I'm quiet and nice, like I can still die too. You don't have to just be the like loose extreme person.
Yep.
And I think the way that I've been trying to deal with it is just learning as much as I can, like taking as many avalanche classes as I can, like being on it about tracking like the snowpack here in Jackson all winter long, not just when I'm home, and like really feeling like I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that like my body and my mind are ready for skiing so that I can like safely move in and out of the mountains physically too. And that's like the only way that I've felt like I've started to process those things, is like trying to make sure that I'm the best like partner out there that I can be for my friends and for myself and for my family, and like owing it to my parents to like be safe and stay alive, because it's so hard to be around like to be the one that's not dead in a way, because you're stuck with it. And you know, already 2 friends died at the beginning of this winter, and that one I haven't even started to really process because it was far more complicated than just a simple avalanche. But I think
definitely
like going through that mourning process is super important, and not rushing it, because I think if you rush it, it will just come back eventually. But then also just like trying to figure out how to move forward in a positive way. And like I really can't stress the importance of like, especially for skiing, like it is a dangerous sport for sure, but we can be better at controlling the danger to a certain extent. And I think people have got to be more on it. One of my like best friends from college, and her dad was a very hilarious guy, but also serious. And he was and he always taught her, which she keeps saying to me, like, there's just no room for errors to a certain extent.
Yeah.
Or not even to a certain extent, there's just no room for errors. And, like, if you're going out there, like, you've just got to be on it and, like, make sure the people around you are on it. And yeah, I think it's hard to process all that thing, but I think it goes back to, and this is, like, my mind is just rambling because I think it's such a weird thing to process, but the guy that I've been taking a lot of my avalanche courses from, this guy Zahan Bamoria in Jackson, he said, and he's so knowledgeable, it's insane, and he kind of said in one of his classes, one of the biggest takeaways, and it talks sort of about what we talked about at the beginning, is the people that he's seen that have stayed alive the longest are the ones that are the most curious. And I think it goes back to that curiosity. When you're curious, like, your head's always up and you're always looking around and you're always, like, curious about the snowpack. You're curious about how you feel that day. You're curious about, like, how your friends are feeling. Like, you're just asking more and more questions, and I think that's super important. And asking, like, those big questions too, like, is it worth it?
Yeah.
Is this, like, for Matilda, she was filming for a, like, fucking video game. It kills me. And you're like, was that worth, like, is it worth it? Is, like, this photo shoot gonna be worth it for me or not? Like, is this day with my friends worth it or not? Like, I don't know. So many things. It's really hard to process.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I don't think you ever come to, like, an end or an answer. Like, it's something that you almost have to, like, sometimes I think it for me, it goes outside of my mind's eye and my visions for periods of time, but it seems to always come back, and always, like, I'm constantly reminded of it. And I think, you know, there is a process, like, where I don't necessarily, like, I still, you know, will get emotional about Jordan and other friends that I've lost, but it's not like I'm grieving 24/7, but it's still something that every day I'm out there, every day, no matter what I think of Jordan, but especially, like, every day I started speed flying because I was supposed to learn how to speed fly from Jordan 2 weeks after he passed away. And so it was kind of something that I wanted to do to be able to, like, get redemption in some ways, or, like, and honor him. And, you know, like, it's like when I'm in the air, I really feel like I'm with him. But I think, yeah, like, I think it's just like a constant, it's almost a constant that you just kind of have to deal with and honor when it comes up. And I love the way that you say, like, you have just become more curious and more responsible for yourself and more able to spend the time, not more able, but, like, more motivated and committed to spend the time to constantly educate yourself and constantly become a better, more educated backcountry traveler. I think that's super awesome.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, because I definitely have no interest in dying
Right.
out there. But I think you're right. Like, just in a way, I think it's good to almost just think about death more, because then it becomes less scary. Like we talked about, like, I don't know if it'll ever not be a fear thing, but I think it's good to, like, talk about it more and deal with it more, because then it's, the more you're exposed to things, the less scary they become.
Yep.
Maybe not less hard, because I don't think it ever will be an easy thing to deal with. But
yep.
it definitely bothered me a lot that, you know, in the climbing world, you can get an accident report on, like, every single climbing accident that's ever happened, pretty much. And it's really frustrating to me that they don't we don't do that in skiing. Like, you still can't get all the information about Matilda's death, or like when JP died, like all that stuff. It's so, or when Liz Daly died, like all those deaths, you can't find the accident reports. And I think that's a huge issue in skiing, that we don't talk more about like what went wrong, because we can't learn from it if we don't know.
Definitely.
And I think people are afraid because obviously there's like always this idea that someone will be blamed because mistakes were made. But I think in the ski world, I find it really difficult, like really hard that we don't talk about it. And I know there's this idea of like guilt, and people like, you know, even in Jackson, when people get in a slide, there's so much like, oh, like you're such an idiot. And it's like, we all could make all of those mistakes.
Totally.
For sure. And we all have and gotten away with it many times. And there's this like terrible negative energy around people being honest about what would happen in the mountains. And I think it's really a huge shame, because we can't learn from it if we don't know what went wrong. Like, I want to know more about what happened with Matilda, so that I know that like she's a similar personality, and so like what heuristic traps did she fall into that day that obviously like would be easy for me to fall into.
Yeah, totally. I would, bringing that up brings a lot of, I've never thought about that in that way, and I would love to, become more of a champion for, like, knowing that we all make mistakes, and, like, for me, I've gone through a lot of personal growth and personal transformation in the past year and a half with breaking my back, and, I stopped drinking alcohol because it wasn't allowing me to be the best possible person in the world that I could be. And, what I've started to realize is all of the failures that I've had in life were just opportunities for me to become a better person and to learn more about myself, and to, to learn a lesson. And I think, it doesn't honor the individuals who have passed to hide those things, and it's not beneficial for like the ski community as a whole, to shame anyone for the mistakes. Like, I was out in Montana at Moonlight Basin when it wasn't bought by Big Sky. Me and a photographer and Scotty Williams were out, and Ryan Day Thompson, I don't know if you know him, were out, and it was super foggy. We went to the far side of the head wall. It was super wind loaded, and I set off like a 1.5-foot crown that was maybe 200 feet wide, and they couldn't even see me. And we got to the bottom, and I wasn't wearing my beacon. I don't know what the heck I was thinking. I was sleeping in my car at that point. Or maybe I was on a friend's couch, but I wasn't giving myself the space to be as consciously aware. And I was stoked to go out with Ryan because he is an amazing photographer, and but I learned, like, now I don't leave my house without wearing my beacon, even if it's on the resort, even if it's at Crested View. And it's, people might talk a lot of shit on me for even bringing that up in this podcast, but I'm okay with that. It's okay to make mistakes. I learned my lesson, and I want as many people to know about it as possible. So I'd love to, if possible, if we could talk more after this about, seeing what we can do to make, even if we can't go back in the past and fix it, but if we can, try and make a movement to just, provide a comforting it's scary to set off an avalanche. It is absolutely terrifying. You see your life flash before your eyes, and then like to get shamed for it, like that's just a whole emotional roller coaster that people don't need to go down. Like you learn your lesson as soon as you do something like that. You don't need to have someone else just pound it into you that you were dumb. You know that you're dumb. Like, you know that you made a mistake, and like sometimes you weren't even like, maybe it was something that was abstract that that you just was slightly outside of your control, and maybe you shouldn't have gone. But I really, I love that you bring that up. Not that I love that it's been hidden, but
I just think creating, like, I think it's important as for each of us to create like a positive space where people feel comfortable talking about near misses or accidents or full on avalanches, and so that we can learn from it. And I think that idea of like this shaming in the ski world is so prevalent, and it's so counterproductive because if you don't feel comfortable talking about it, you're not going to. But if you can let people feel comfortable talking about the mistakes they made, then they will. And obviously it's not to promote people to make more mistakes. I think it'll promote people to be more conscious, or like you can start to recognize like patterns of like things that you do, like, oh, that guy does that and that led to that. I do that. Like I need to like switch up that routine, or like be more on it in this way or that way.
Yeah.
But I think it's pretty, the negative side of the ski world, like the judgment between people gets so old to me. Because at the end of the day, Jesus, we're like sliding down frozen water on pieces of wood and plastic. Like,
right.
we don't need to judge each other about it, how you do it.
Totally. Yeah, that, I use that line all the time. Like, we're just sliding down ice on 2 planks of wood. Or
it's very silly. It's silly in, like, the best way, but it's still, at the end of the day, very silly.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I definitely think that there are a lot of egos and judgment that can be dropped. Like, bottom line, we all don't want to die. We all want to stay alive. We all are doing our best. Maybe some people could do a lot better. Some people are okay with ignorance. And just kind of have, a mentality that like, oh, things will be okay, or, and I definitely think that in the end, if you're an asshole to a person like that, you're just going to reinforce that what they're doing is right, because you're going to polarize it, and you're going to force them to hold on to their opinion tighter, instead of opening it up in a way where the conversation is, where it's okay to have that conversation, and where you say, hey, like, I think that maybe, this could be done better, or, I really think that if you open up the conversation and you open it up as a neutral forum for people to speak their truth, then you really open up the opportunity for personal growth, and then if we all go through personal growth, then the community grows.
Totally. I think there should be a campaign of like, everyone try to be less of an asshole.
Yeah.
Like, we don't need any more these days.
Right? Yeah. I like started a group on Facebook called I Love Skiing, and like a big part of it is like, we're all part of the same community. We're all trying to, in the end, go out and have fun. And then I've started a company called Academy of Skiing, which is an online resource for people to learn about skiing. And I don't touch anything in the backcountry sort of like education, because I don't know enough, and I don't want to, be responsible for others in that way. But I think there's also like, I'm trying to bridge the gap again between what pros do in the industry, and the average tourist, who is the meat and potatoes of our ski economy. I feel like what the tourists see in the movies now is so unattainable that they just like write it off as like there's two separate communities now. And I think that there's a lot of things that can be applied, like whether you're a pro or just starting out skiing, like there's a lot of things that can be applied just in the personal, like pushing your own personal boundaries arena, and the arena of community and not being embarrassed. Like I wrote a whole article about how embarrassment isn't self-serving, and being your worst critic, and then like how heckling on in the ski community, like, yeah, it's funny, but in the end it's like, and I don't want, people might think I'm soft or whatever, but in the end it's bullying. And like, I'm not trying to be a snowflake millennial, but I'm trying to create a community where people understand that, like, if I don't fall in a day, I'm almost disappointed, because it didn't mean that I wasn't pushing myself. And, I often fall, but I've also learned how to fall well so that I'm not, like, injuring myself every day, But, yeah, I think, let's start the campaign. Let's do something about it.
Yeah, just be more stoic and less, like, all the other crap.
Yeah, totally. Well, we might have just covered it, but I have a couple last questions for you. What would you, what kind of advice would you give to someone, like a kid or someone, like, obviously you entered the scene late, so not even a kid, but someone that wants to do what you do, and what would that piece of advice be?
Not to steal this like major ad campaign that already exists, but I would say just do it. Like, I think there's not enough people in the world that just like go for it, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be skiing, but there's this amazing book called Do Work. I'm gonna have to think of the author. And it's so good, and it talks about like, like if you have a project or if you have an idea, just do it. Like, get rid of the fear, or like, don't make it perfect. Like, if you have this idea for a business, it doesn't have to be perfect. Or if you have an idea for a book, just start writing it, because it'll never be perfect. So if you wait for it to be perfect, like, you're waiting forever. But just do it. Like, I feel like I signed up for comps and quit my job, and I did it in a fairly responsible way. I had some money saved, but probably not enough. But I like just did it and just started signing up for comps. And it doesn't mean there's this, I mean, you look at Instagram and it kind of seems like there's overnight success, and it was not an overnight success. Like, I'm just getting to the point where I can like afford to be a professional skier and get paid enough, but like, you just got to do it. Like, sign up for that comp, like, film your friends or have your friends film you, and like put in the hard work too. Like, I skied by myself for hours all day during every single winter. I'd have like the lifties at the sublet chair in Jackson time me, and I would ski the altitudes as fast as I could and ski a different line every time and try to ski like top to bottom runs and like practice visualization. And like, I definitely worked really hard to get out of the back seat of my ski boots, and like wasn't afraid to take lessons from anyone that would give them to me.
Yep.
And like do drills and like do it, but just do it. Like, don't be afraid to just jump in and like do it. Cause I am like such a strong believer that, and people argue with me all the time about this, but I think anyone can do absolutely anything. Like 100% believe that with like the core of my being. And I think if you're willing to put in the hard work, and like, it's definitely hard work. Like, going to the gym every day sucks. Like, it's not as fun as powder skiing, but it's awesome when it pays off. And like, you just have to start doing it every single day. Like, start doing something every day to work towards that goal, and make sure, like, just question yourself all the time. Like, is what I'm doing, like, helping me with what I want to achieve. And if it's not, then like get rid of that and like start or add like one small thing. It's like people talk about like removing things, like when they go on diets or like whatever, it's always about like taking something out, but like think about like putting something in, like what can you do every day that's like an addition, because those are so much easier than like getting rid of the things that you've already have ingrained in you. But like if it's like at least skiing 3 runs by yourself so you can like really concentrate on getting better, do that every single day and then continue your ski day like you were before.
Yeah.
But just freaking get out there.
I love it, and I totally agree that anyone can do anything that they set their mind to, and if you, like, what you conceive and believe you can achieve is like a quote that I read recently. And
totally.
Yeah, I totally 100% wholeheartedly agree with it. It may not take the path that you think it's going to take, and it may not show up exactly the way that you think it's going to show up, but I think, you know, if you just keep the end goal in sight and you keep putting one foot in front of the other, you're going to make it to the top of the mountain.
Yeah, you for sure will. And if you have lots of snacks, it's really helpful.
Yeah, right. Totally. Well, yeah, I guess one last question. If you could have, and this might, you know, if you could have one lasting impact on the world, what would it be?
I think maybe off that campaign of like people just being way kinder to each other, and I hope that like my interactions with people like show that, and just that like you can, no matter what you're doing, whether you're a professional athlete or a business person or just like a student or anything that you're doing, like I really think kindness is underrated these days, and I hope that I am kind to everyone around me, and even if it's just a handful of people, like having those interactions of like kindness and people being good to each other. I hope that that's part of what I leave behind.
Definitely. I love it. Well, thank you so much for your time. This is awesome.
Thank you.
It was good to catch up.
Yeah, we'll have to go skiing.
Definitely. I would love to. Are you ever down in Colorado, Crested Butte area, Aspen area?
Yeah, I've been hanging out in Aspen quite a bit lately, and I have this running joke that I have the worst memories from Crested Butte from tomahawking through that mogul field.
Yep.
So I need to come back and redeem my like image of Crested Butte because it's a bad one right now.
Yeah.
I'll come visit.
Definitely. You're always welcome here as long as you're not allergic to dogs. I've got 2 big furry dogs that shed all over the place, but you're always welcome at my place, and I'll definitely make it out to Jackson here at some point, so I'll give you a shout.
Yes, come. We have 2 massive couches and so much heated floor space.
Sweet.
So
perfect.
Yeah, anyone's welcome. All ski bums welcome.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm doing a webisode series called Ski-nanigans.
Oh, nice.
Which is just all about having fun on skis, and it's, you know, kind of tying into that same like mentality of, you know, creating community and just like having fun, and, you know, just the shenanigans that come along with, you know, anything outdoors. Like when you get outside and you get that playful kid mentality, like that's what I'm trying to promote and go for. So
yeah,
I'll make a Jackson trip out of it, and we'll we'll go do some ski-nanigans. Yeah,
that'd be dope.
Well, sweet. Thank you so much, Hadley. You're awesome. I appreciate it.
You too.
One last thing. Where can people find you on social media?
The social media. I'm on Instagram. I think it's Had Hammer, but if you just put in Hadley Hammer, I should come up. On Facebook. I'm on Twitter, but it's currently hacked, and I'm trying to fix it, so
gotcha.
Maybe not on Twitter.
Yeah.
Or if anyone ever has any questions too, like, I don't know, I like getting emails from people, and it's just hadleyhammer@gmail.com.
Sweet.
Or you can send me a letter, you know, whatever.
What's up, guys? I hope you guys really enjoyed that conversation with Hadley Hammer. I was so impressed by what she brought, and especially the part about curiosity, and pretty much just her whole attitude on life is very inspiring. And I hope that you took away some inspiring motivation and some applicable advice to help you on your journey. As always, it helps a ton if you go to iTunes and rate, review, or subscribe. And thanks a ton for listening.